worked with and empowered the local indigenous population to tell their own story. And in this case, the story is about a clean energy project that's underway. So my colleague and her students took them north to the Arctic Circle, produced this documentary as a school project, and it was so good that it was picked up by CTV, Canadian National Television, which has aired this documentary. And I wanted to show you just a couple of minutes of this so that you get a feel for it. The voice that you hear is in the local language, and the music that you hear is local as well.
أقارني توصل القتاني تماني القود كما يوتسو تتمكنين نونني تمكنين إيماني أفتي تلمت إلواني توينك أسيتي توني حقسمون سلومي تويت أقسوالو توتوت إكمالي روتيت إكماتي تسيوت إكماني أقويو تسيسوت إلو يواتيني كيسياني أقسوالو سلومي لتريو قانرني سرمي سرميمي إمارميلو تمنى نقاه لقطفوت تمنى لو أسيتي لان لقسو
So here we have our 500-gallon tank, which heats our homes. Sometimes we run out of fuel. We don't have any heat in our homes. Sometimes for a day or two, even if there's a small spill, you can smell it in the whole, in the whole house. So even inside in the house, sometimes there's fuel spills and there's leaks. Sometimes the tanks are so old that they start to rust, and they start to have leaks around these places, around the bottom ends here, and that's where it starts to leak, and that's where it's very dangerous.
Okay, you get the feel for this. As I say, some really outstanding work by my colleague, Professor Aphrodite Salas, and her university students. As you see, what a wonderful professional piece of work, right? It's hard to believe it was, not hard to believe, but it's great that it was produced by university students. So a few more of the characteristics then of peace journalism. That peace journalists can report with depth and context in mind, rather than just superficial constructs. Peace journalists consider the consequences of their reporting. So if I tell this story in this way, what happens? Am I encouraging violence? Am I, a phrase I use all the time, am I pouring gasoline on the fire? And I don't think, there are many such examples of traditional journalism that have done just that. What about the words that we use? So this is very important in peace journalism as well. Are we using words that are sensational or inflammatory or demonizing? And can these words be replaced with more neutral and less gasoline on the fire sorts of verbiage? We have to be careful as well about the images that we select as peace journalists. I would never say we can't use bloody images, but if we're using them, why? Are we using them as clickbait? Are we using them to be sensational? Are they really needed to tell the story? And we'll dive into that a little bit more in a few minutes. And finally, peace journalists offer counter narratives that debunk media created or perpetuated stereotypes, myths, and misperceptions. So what do I mean by a counter narrative? A counter narrative goes against the traditional sort of media narratives. For example, when you read a story in an American or European newspaper, and that story is about Africa, what is most likely the topic of the story? And we can count these on one hand, right? So the topic of the story would be famine, would be disease, would be war, would be political unrest of some kind. You get the idea. And these things do occur in Africa, but they're not all that occurs in Africa, right? So a counter narrative would tell different kinds of stories from Africa. Stories about business and banking and entrepreneurship, stories about cultural touchstones about authors and poets and architects. So there's a whole lot more to the Africa story than we're getting in traditional media. And a peace journalist would want to offer those counter narratives. Okay, so at this point, you are all unofficial peace journalism experts. I mean, close to it, right? You have an idea, I hope, about peace journalism. So I'm going to put you to work. What you're about to see on your screen. So the story that you're about to see on the screen, I would like you to read this and to be ready to answer the question for me, is it peace journalism? Why or why not? And because I spent many years as a professor, I will not hesitate to call on you if you don't volunteer, whether your camera is on or not. So turning your camera off won't save you. So please take a minute and read this and then answer the question for me. Be ready to answer the question, is it peace journalism? Okay, take about a minute or so to finish this up. And I will give you a warning. I'm going to pick on Elizabeth first. So Elizabeth, be ready for me. Okay, is it peace journalism? Elizabeth, unmute yourself and tell us, is it yes or no?
I would say no.
Okay, you would say correctly. Why is this not peace journalism?
Well, I mean, just immediately saying that the peace talks are lay in ruins.
Good.
The use of the word massacre and mutilated the bodies, kind of trying to create like a visceral response to the
Good.
reader.
That's really good. Okay, who else would like to add on to Elizabeth's comments? Maham, could I call on you? Unmute yourself, please.
You sure can. No worries. I was actually just trying to say something different than her. So I was going to volunteer. Well, I just feel like the bias is really clear. So as you read this, it's coming in with a bias towards who the villain is and who the oppressor versus the oppressor, right? Who's the victim here and who's waging the war. And, your sympathy is going to lay with one over the other as soon as you're done reading it.
So absolutely, very nicely done. So look at the story. First of all, look at the way it's framed. Peace talks are in ruins. So if peace is not possible, then what's the only alternative? Violence, war, right? So it's framed in such a way that it leaves no possibility of even discussing peace, let alone engendering peace. Look at the language: massacre, mutilate, and so on. So it's really inflammatory, as Elizabeth says, emotional language, right? So one of the ways that we know fake news is that it gets a visceral emotional response. Well, the same can be said of this. It's very one-sided, as we learned as well, right? So it reads like it could almost be a press release from the military, right? So let's look at the same story framed as peace journalism. There was condemnation across the political spectrum in Macedonia after a police patrol suffered the loss of 8 men. Both the main parties representing the country's minority Albanians distanced themselves from the killings, believed to be the work of the self-styled National Liberation Army. Ali Ahmedi, a political leader of the NLA, denied that his men had attacked the patrol, saying that they may have fired in self-defense. But the Macedonian government said it had done nothing to provoke the machine gun fire and rocket-propelled grenades, which destroyed 3 trucks. A spokesman added that the bodies appeared to have been disfigured. How is this different? Well, first of all, it's framed differently. So there's condemnation across the political spectrum instead of peace is not possible. The inflammatory language is gone. We're not ignoring what happened, but we're not pouring gasoline on the fire. A spokesman added that the bodies appeared to have been disfigured. So there's no need to, I think, for the details on the head was smashed in and so on and so forth. The story is a little better balanced. So the information with Ali Ahmedi is further up in the story. All right? So that's an example of how peace journalism then can take a story and without ignoring the facts, without sweeping the bad news under the rug, to reframe that story in a way that at minimum doesn't pour gasoline on the fire, doesn't make the situation worse. Now, there's a lot more that we could talk about here, but I want to leave at least 10 minutes for discussion. So real quickly, let's talk about how we can apply these principles of peace journalism. So as I've taught peace journalism around the world and in my textbook, we talk about how peace journalism can apply, for example, to reporting about refugees, to giving them a voice. How peace journalism can report about terrorism, about crime. Certainly peace journalism has a strong application when we're talking about electoral reporting. So I blogged about how a peace journalist would report the election the day before the election. So peace journalism obviously and also could apply to reporting wars and war content. So I gave a seminar not too long ago online, and I was asked to talk specifically about how peace journalism could apply to coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. So I came up with a few ideas that I'll share with you now real quickly before we close. So the questions, and this was for journalists who were in the region or covering the conflict. And instead of telling them do this, don't do that, I framed this as questions. So does the coverage present all victims as worthy? Does it accurately portray suffering on all sides? So what we've seen is in Israeli and pro-Israeli media, it largely ignores Palestinian suffering. And in Arab language media, it largely ignored the suffering from October 7th. Is the coverage contextual? I think that's an interesting question, right? So does it include the necessary background? So the Israel-Hamas conflict didn't begin on October 7th, right? Are the media disseminating only factual, verified information and images? So especially in the time right after the conflict started, so many of the images were recycled, taken from previous conflicts in the region. Does the coverage generalize, stereotype, scapegoat, and demonize them? Does it say all Palestinians are this, or all Palestinians believe this, or all Israelis are this, or all Israelis believe this? We know that neither group is a monolith. Is there any discussion of peace? So is it simply a play-by-play of the war, or are we talking about peace and giving a voice to peace builders? We don't have time to see the example I have here, but I did a small study about Ukraine, and it showed that in Ukraine war coverage, there's almost no discussion of peace. What are the consequences of the reporting? Does the reporting make the conflict more intractable? On social media, are journalists actively combating falsehoods about the war? Are voices heard from only one side? And then finally, is the coverage, language, and images sensational? Is it clickbait? How many bloody images of children are necessary? Should we use them? I'm not here to say that we should or shouldn't, but I am here to say I think that we can and should be more thoughtful about the ways that we use those images. So as I close, then, we've seen today that peace journalism is when reporters and editors are making these choices that can create an atmosphere conducive to peace. That peace journalism is indeed consistent with the best principles of traditional journalism, and that peace journalism can be applicable across a wide number of reporting domains, everything from environment to cross-border relations, to terrorism, to politics, and yes, to war and peace itself. So you see on the screen my contact information, and I'm hoping that today's just the beginning of a lengthy discussion. The one additional thing that I'm going to do is in the chat, I'm going to put the address for my blog, which I hope that you'll find interesting. I'm sort of regularly talking about these issues. So at this point, let me turn things back over to David, and we can talk a little bit. So David.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
One of the questions that I have has to do with the nature of journalism. And I mean, you've been focusing on print journalism in this conversation, but I know you look at journalism more broadly. And I'm looking for examples of non-print journalism. You know, I'm always thinking about, well, what should I be reading, right? What should I be listening to? What should I be following? Do you have any thoughts about where I should find that and what I should be doing? I mean, it's MSNBC, Fox. I feel like that's out there. Is there something else I should be looking at?
So you won't be surprised to learn that I get this question all the time. Okay. And you probably also won't be surprised to learn that I wish I could say, but I can't, go here. This is the source. So in 2024, informed people have to, and now I'm going back to my Kansas roots, we have to graze, and we have to graze widely. Okay. So I do recommend that you look at partisan media. So from time to time, I will, for example, make my wife watch Sean Hannity. She usually doesn't speak to me for a day or so afterwards, but I tell her it's the price we pay, because we need to know what Sean Hannity is telling millions of people. And we need to know what Rachel Maddow is telling millions of people.
Right.
So in terms of what outlets to look at, I mean,
Right.
it's, you can't point at any one outlet and say, oh, there's peace journalism.
Right.
I do think The Guardian does a lot of what I would consider peace journalism.
Okay. Okay.
To name an individual journalist, I think Nicholas Kristof at the New York Times does a
Yeah.
lot of what I would consider peace journalism. If you haven't read his book, and the name escapes me, but it's about the kids that he grew up with in rural Oregon and how they've fallen victim to they've led these lives of despair because they've been marginalized. It's just terrific. So I think that he does a lot of really good peace journalism work. So you can find it, it's out there. But my best advice is just try to inform yourself as broadly as possible.
Okay. Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Stephen. This was so interesting to listen to. And I'm wondering, and as you were mentioning the New York Times, I was over here cringing because I love the New York Times, but I watched a lot of that loaded reporting come out even from the New York Times. And you can't help but wonder how much of that is not so much even a desire to spin or sell, but it's really just what they understand the narrative to be, and that bias. Like,
It is.
lack of depth even from our editors down, top down. But I guess I'm wondering how well this sounds to me like social justice journalism and solutions-based journalism might be synonyms for similar to what you are doing. Those are also buzzwords that we hear, I think, around the industry. How does this idea get received by some of the major outlets that when you talk to them about it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I've been teaching peace journalism since, I don't know, something like 2008. Anyway, many years, and I've taught in 32 countries. And the answer is the hardest sell is in the U.S. and in Europe. Because I think there's a certain, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, but especially in the big name media outlets, there's a certain arrogance that we know how to do it, and we don't need any, we don't need to think anything else, that we have all the answers. Conversely, in places like sub-Saharan Africa, Eastern Europe, and so on, the reception of peace journalism, I've received an excellent reception. And I think part of that is just based on the mistaken assumption that because I'm an American academic and journalist, that I must know what I'm talking about. So I admit that I take advantage of this. But when you break it down, a good example is Northern Ireland. So I've done a lot of work and projects in Northern Ireland. And when they hear the term peace journalism, they absolutely bristle, because the word peace in Northern Ireland is so loaded, right? And so I didn't even use the term peace journalism. I'll go through the principles and I'll say, well, what do you think of these? Well, we think it's a good idea. And I'll say, well, this is peace journalism. No. I said, call it bangers and mash. I don't care what you call it. It's about the principles.
Right.
And so I think that's the best answer I can give to your question. Now, I think something that you implied that I'll go on ahead and answer as well. So back to David's question about what media outlets to look at. So if I want coverage of the Israel-Hamas war, I do want to read the New York Times.
Sure.
And I also want to look at Al Jazeera.
Sure.
And Al Arabiya. And I want to look
Tel
at
Aviv Times. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to look at sources across the spectrum, at Haaretz. I want to look at sources across the spectrum, because I'm not going to get everything I need from the New York Times, and I'm not going to get everything I need from Al Jazeera. So thank you for your question.
I hope that some down the road. I tried years ago. I applied for one of your fellowships, but I wasn't actually actively working for an outlet. So I think I didn't get accepted. Not that I'm complaining, but I understand why now.
I'm
Now
sorry.
understanding the depth of your work. But I would hope that, I'm really truly thinking with selfish agenda, clearly. Wouldn't it be great to have a fellowship that teaches journalist academics how to teach this and because this is how I teach journalism, and I don't see it as peace journalism. I just see it as truly objective information, because there's war on information right now. But I wonder if there's like a recommitment and having to do that with international reporting and things like that. But a fellowship of that sort I feel like I would know so many people who would maybe reconsider how they teach journalism in that light.
So don't tell anyone. Actually,
Okay.
they already know. The East-West Center, when they hired me, they knew what they were getting, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I'm slowly going to be working with them on is sort of repositioning the things that they do. And I think a lot of what they do, most of what they do, is 95% of what they do is really smart, and it's strategic, and it's valuable. I'd like to bring the peace element in, and I want to bring more peace journalism in. So thus far, up to this point, the only peace journalism in any East-West Center programming is the peace journalism that I brought in to the cross-border program.
Okay.
I look to expand that.
Wonderful.
And I think that they hired me with the knowledge that I'm probably not going to take no for an answer.
I love
So
it.
I think that your suggestion is an excellent.
Thank you so much.
Well, Stephen, I think you've got a partner at Harper College.
Oh, you certainly. Let's take everybody Qatar and see what they're doing over there.
Well, make sure and send me, you have my email address. Make sure
I
and send me an
Got your
email
contact
and say hi, so that I have your contact information as well. Once more, I may have taken this off too quickly. This is my email address, YOUNGBLS. I didn't make that up. Look, at eastwestcenter.org.
Any
Part of my last name with my first initial.
any final questions for Stephen? All right. Stephen, thank you. And enjoy. The day is just beginning where you are and ending where we are. So enjoy your time in the Aloha State. I was glad to connect with you again. And let's be in touch, because like I said, I know some people I need to connect you with at the Matsunaga Institute. Yeah, and I was there. I gave a talk there about 4 years ago. And so I can connect you with some folks there. So thank you. So we are, it is now 4 o'clock in Washington. And I think what I would want to do is we could take another 15-minute break, but I think we're just going to continue, if that's okay, and kind of move to the discussion part of this, which may then end up getting us out a little bit early, which is fine, rather than us kind of taking a break and coming back, stay with the momentum. So generally what I like to do at the end of the program is I want to talk a little bit about the Forge Center. So I'm going to start off with that, not spend a whole lot of time with that. But then also really to have a conversation centered around going forward, right, in this community of people who focus on community college students, focus on often, I'm going to say marginalized populations, right, who are coming into college, focusing on clearly communities of color and so forth, looking at environments in which we operate on and what we should be doing in advancing peace and how the Forge Center can help you. I'm going to start though, if it's okay, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Forge Center, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time with that, but spend a little bit of time with that. So give me a second. I am going to go to, right, and I'm going to share my screen. And I just want to talk about some of the things that we do there, only because I guess I'm entitled to a little bit of a commercial about the Forge Center. So some of you, and we're a small group right now, and some of you come every year, which I really appreciate. And some of you are kind of new to this environment and in this setting. We've been doing this, like I said, since 2004, partnering. Before then, this effort was an effort that was an effort that I was involved in. It wasn't necessarily an effort that came from the Ford Center, but we started doing this seminar in 2013 at Montgomery College. And from 2013 until 2019, it was done face to face. And actually, the seminar itself, it came into existence even prior to that when I was at the U.S. Institute of Peace in Washington. So we did it there for several years when it was extensively funded by the federal government. A lot of people were involved in it. So now we're kind of in this doing it virtually. So just to cover some things from what the Ford Center does is that we are a Washington-based 501c3 corporation, which was actually established in 2015, but really saw its work starting in 2000 with the work of Paul Forge, who focused on experiential based education for people who wanted to work in the humanitarian sphere. So we still focus on that by having immersive simulations, as you can see. If you go down here, that thing that we do this once or twice a year. The next one we will do will be in July. One of the things to know about the simulations that we do is that they are designed for graduate students for the most part, but we have done them for undergraduate, even community colleges. And one of the programs we work with every year in our simulation, which is face-to-face in Western Maryland, is a community college in Western Maryland that provides role players, which is Allegheny College of Maryland. And if you're interested, about 2 years ago, I wrote an article in Community College Daily about that. So we're focusing on having having college students, graduate students, see what the experience is of being a humanitarian worker. So we create a country, we create conditions, we create circumstances, and then people are working in that over the course of several days. So that's our kind of our primary, and we did this in Florida for many years. We now do it in Western Maryland. Last October, a year ago, we did a program at Embry-Riddle University in Daytona Beach. We've worked with primarily George Mason, but we've worked with the University of North Carolina, and we work with lots of different universities around the United States. Kind of lost, but lots of them. Kennesaw State. The other thing that we do is we have periodically, we've just restarted this online conversations called Ford Center Conversation. We're dealing with specific issues. If you go to this link, you can then go and see the previous conversations we've had online. They tend to deal with often pedagogical, but also kind of contemporary issues of peace and conflict resolution and humanitarian work. And then finally, this seminar, which we've been running now since 2000 virtually, but it's existed even before then for a while. We have a board. Sarah Dorr is on our board. We have an 8-person board. We have a staff of about 14 people. A lot of you have been working with Heather Payne, who is our one paid staff member, and Heather put a lot of this together. So I just wanted to let you know about what we do, and hopefully you will still connect with us. You are now on our, for better or worse, on our mailing list to see what we're doing and the things that we're going to be doing. We have a Forge Fellows program, which I'll just click to that real briefly, and then I can then we'll go into a broader conversation. We have 2 fellows. So last week, Nikki Stinson was the moderator for part of it. She's been helping on the curriculum, and Emily Hall is another fellow who's been helping looking at grants. And then these were fellows from the previous year. So I'm just going to stop sharing that so that you know a little bit about the Forge Center. And then it's a small group of us, but it's, worth having a conversation. We've been doing this now for a while. Every year we kind of end with kind of getting your sense of what it was like. And certainly we're going to send out a survey too. It'll be probably the week after Thanksgiving, which will ask you more poignant questions about technology, when it took place, timing, those types of technical things, right? That you can comment on. So I'm not adverse to having that type of conversation, but I really want to have a broader conversation about what we're trying to do in our audience and maybe the things that we should be emphasizing in doing this. So any thoughts about what we did today? Any thoughts about what we could be doing? We are recording this, but I'm also taking notes. So I know, I'm trying to think. Sarah comes every, Sarah, are you still there? Doesn't look like Sarah's there. Tom, yeah, Sarah. Thoughts
Yeah.
thoughts about what we're doing here and how we can improve it. And I don't want to go into the technical stuff. I'm really more interested in kind of the content and things that we're covering and maybe how do we get to our audiences. Yeah.
Well, I just want a presence that it's 10 p.m. here, so I don't know how cogent I am.
It's 10 p.m. where you are, and it was 10 a.m. where Steve Youngblood was in Hawaii. So, you know, we
Exactly.
we can't defy physics or whatever the word is, right? There's nothing we can do about that. But I mean, how do we, I mean, you came from Austin Community College. You're not at Austin Community College any longer. You're still there part-time.
I'm still there. Yeah, I don't want to give up on those kids and on my colleagues, you know, I just can't, not with
Okay.
everything going on.
Okay. So
And
what,
also it helps me stay feeling connected and
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
What are the types of things that community college students are interested? I mean, we used to have a day for community college students and a day for faculty. And then a couple of years ago, we decided to merge them two and not separate them out, only because sometimes you've got maybe I'm gonna use the, you know, I'm gonna say more advanced, and that's not the right word, but community college students who we're gonna kind of get into this kind of curricular stuff, right? And faculty who want to hear about the stuff that's more related to students. But
Well, I'm teaching a Give Peace a Chance class, which is humanities. It started as an honors class, but now I'm teaching it for, you know, first year humanities students as well.
Mhm.
And they seem to really like to talk about social movements. They seem really engaged with that. So tying it into current events of the time, I think, and what's relevant to them, like all of this stuff that we were talking about earlier, the things that get them out and protesting. I think having content around those topics specifically geared towards, you know, an audience that maybe is mixed with educators and students might be draw them in, and then maybe they'll stay for the other stuff, right? Um,
Tom, you had your Afghan young women here, and we really admire them because they're so brave and so determined, and we can't measure up to them in any way, shape, or form for them being here. But what have what do you think they got out of it, and what more could we do for
Well,
them?
you know, this relates to the whole idea of peace building. And so what did they get? They got some sense of community, and that there are people who actually want to listen to what they have to say, even though what they say may not exactly track the lecture that was just given. So on behalf of all of them, thank you for allowing me to bring them here at an odd time of the day for them. And so I have more of a question, and I thought it was a great 3 days. I was able to be here for most of it. They all are asking me for the YouTubes or whatever, and I'll get them that. But
We'll get that out soon.
how do you invite students though? How come? I mean, I don't know who the audience is intended to be.
Well, you know, it was designed for community colleges,
Yeah.
and we have a mailing list of people that come every year, and I'm usually working through faculty, so I've got quite a broad net of faculty, and probably I've got a network of 150 community college faculty. We had 80 people that registered, but at most we had maybe tops 30 people in one room, and it's because of the 80 people, 20 of them are faculty who pay, but the students don't pay.
Yeah.
And so when they don't pay, they don't show up, right? And maybe they do, and I'm glad that they're here, who are students. So I'm often torn between this. If I charge students $5, they'd show up because they feel like they spent $5. On the other hand, even $5 is hard for students to come up with, right? So I'm kind of struggling with that sometimes.
Yeah. No, I thought the content would have been interesting to students as well, not just faculty.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's often interesting to hear
Yeah.
what are these professors thinking about when they're designing these courses for me? What is their goal? Maybe I'm missing the point, but
Yeah, there isn't really a unified community of community college educators that you can just kind of go to. There are associations that I work with and I promote it through those associations, but it's very decentralized, right?
Yeah.
For me to reach people at Austin Community College, I have to go to Austin Community College. And I've got Shireen Kosrapur to do that for me because I've been working with her for so long. If I want to work, you know, I have to go to individual community college.
these girls look at it quite differently. And so they're always trying to find out, is there some way I can learn about how I can be better educated?
Yeah,
And so, I mean, I think in community colleges are to me more like the Afghan experience. I mean, these are people who fight to be educated, not who try to find a way to get out of writing a paper or doing something.
Yeah,
they're all
right.
actively pursuing education. And I think the community college experience, and I did not attend a community college, but I
Yeah.
think you attract that kind of student who is scraping, to get an education. And so
Yeah.
there's an alliance there that would
Yeah.
be interesting for the Afghans or whoever we may attract overseas to hear from.
How do you I'm just curious, how did you get these students to work with in Afghanistan? And it's inconvenient and risky for them, right?
Well, they trust me, so we do at different times we work in different ways. But right now, what happened was I was working with Afghan, mostly college students and other people back in 2016 and forward. Then, when the Taliban took over in 2021, I had started a youth mentoring program called the Global Youth Development Initiative. So we had a couple hundred of people involved in that. When the Taliban took over, I was getting bombarded with two kinds of requests. One, remove my name from your website, you're an American, and they're going to find me. And the other was, can you help me get out?
Oh,
And
wow.
so we took the website down just for security reasons. Interestingly enough, their participation in it may have been an avenue for an asylum case because they became an open threat. But that was a secondary issue to somebody attacking them. And so that led to this August 2021 problem. And after a few months, we realized it was real. And a young woman who's actually an activist who's now in Paris at I think Pantheon, getting a master's, said we should start teaching English because the girls are beside themselves. So I started doing that. It'll be 3 years next month.
Wow.
So it's all word of mouth. I had other teachers, and it's hard to get people to commit, for 3 years or whatever. So you have to want to do it, and you have to get something out of it. And so I get somebody tells my cousin this, my cousin that, this is my girlfriend. And so I think in my English class, there's 120 names.
Oh my goodness.
Well, no, but we get 15, right?
I see.
Right now we have a pretty active group, but there's lots of problems that they have in joining, but they all want. I mean, the reason I say the number is they all want, and some have passed on. We have a few at Lynchburg is quite good. The University of Lynchburg in Virginia is an active program for Afghans there. And so we actually have 3 now that are attending college there.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's a nice thing. And so I try to help them get their English up, get through a Duolingo or TOEFL exam at a level that may qualify for some kind of scholarship and things like that. So we think we're doing a little bit of good. But it kind of happened organically with me. It wasn't my intention. When I started out to be teaching English, I used to spend a lot of time learning the grammar rules before I taught a class. Now AI is my friend. I can tell ChatGPT, give me the rules about the past perfect, conditional, whatever all these things are, and it makes me a better teacher. Prepare a 20-question quiz, and so I don't have the anxiety that I used to.
What is an Oxford comma? Right.
But more importantly is, and I told Maham this in the break, is that we think we have shown them that somebody cares.
Yes. Yes.
And you did that too.
I was struck by it's a very emotional work that you do, and I was struck. I shared it with someone. The one lady says, "Oh, I don't have any formal education. I'm a housewife." And I don't remember who she was last time. And she says, I'm doing this to better myself. Yeah, it breaks your heart.
I get as much as them. Now I'm distracted because I'm trying to help somebody fill out a Chevening UK application for Afghans that just opened up poses in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And you have to walk them through step by step. It's all screenshots. How do I answer this question? So, it's a 24/7 job, but whatever I can do to bring these kinds of people, they have a pretty wide network of different activities. We actually have a group that helps them apply for college through the Common App. Run an art group for them now, trying to take the girls who can't go to school, and they're quite good artists. I have an Etsy page. We sell some printed T-shirts, and I can send the money by Western Union to the girls there. And
well, let us know all that you're doing. You have a partner now with the Forge Center.
Great, good. I'm happy to hear
I
that.
want to say that. I know Sarah Dora is there, and I don't think Sarah's going to disagree with me. No, and so let's continue to see what we can do. I think for a lot of Americans,
nobody cares about Afghanistan.
I was going to say we are like, what's the headline this week, right? Kind of a thing. And I was at the U.S. Remember, I was at the U.S. Institute of Peace.
Yeah.
During the period when we were heaviest in Afghanistan, right? And doing all that work. And we were doing education. I wasn't, but we had people doing education in Afghanistan. But it was, we were reestablishing universities. We were doing so much that we were building. We were nation building, you might say, even though we have to call it that. We were doing a lot of that. And to think that all of that just went to dust, it's just heartbreaking. And
they're not openly critical of America. I mean, they maybe they have the right to be. I try not to get involved in the politics. Don't talk about it, but they really appreciate opportunities that might be afforded them in any way, right? And unfortunately, some of them think somebody tells them go fund me. Well, and I just say I've never heard of anybody paying a college students' tuition by GoFundMe. First of all, you don't even understand how many thousands of dollars you need. I know. I said, don't think you're going to get it that way.
Right.
Yeah, I'm the realist.
No,
in
you
a
have
supportive way.
You have to be.
Try to find ways to get them to think about other ways. And I keep telling them on the Common App, use community colleges.
Yeah.
And find one where you have a relative so you can stay close by, give up, don't worry about the room and board and all that, because you stay with Uncle so-and-so. And the tuition.
Well, and it's urban community colleges too, in big cities. It's the colleges that were here. Oakton was here. Harper was here. I mean, Sarah's still at Austin Community Colleges. It's those big cities, right, that have those communities that can be used. And I don't know how to connect there. So, anybody else have thoughts? Thank you, Tom. And we're going to continue to work together. Anybody else have thoughts about this program? Even beyond supporting Afghan women and girls, which we want to continue to do, but what we can be doing,
just where you have a foothold somewhere like ACC, maybe see what other groups are going right now and what they're doing. Like, for example, we have this religious literacy, like interfaith dialogue thing happening that a lot of people are showing up for. And I think that could be something that we could connect with and might bring more people into this event, things like that.
Well, and partnering directly with a program, I've kind of put that out there every year, and it doesn't seem to manifest, but it could, right? In other words, we run this and I'm not directly partnering anywhere, right? I could partner with Austin Community College or somewhere else to work within to have a partnership, but then allow it to everybody else. One of the things that I want to make sure though is that the costs continue to be low and it's accessible to many. And the more infrastructure you create, right, the more that there is somebody who's got a cost in there somewhere. When we used to do this face-to-face at George Mason Northern Virginia Community College, we were charging $800 for, and they had to fly to Washington and then stay. I mean, I don't want to go back to those days, right? Kind of a thing. So that's the only thing I would say, right? I'm perfectly willing to work with whomever, but yeah, keep it priced
I
down.
could help you. You know, I have a lot of, not that you want to cater to the Afghan community, but there are students at different universities in the old days through Fulbright who are still here
Yeah.
that I could connect you with if you're trying to get students.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are spread around you know, on the ground in the USA.
Sure.
But I think there's a panache to getting kids from other countries as well. I used to do a lot of work in India.
But no, thank you. But then that connection is that what I'm always interested in is, yes, we get students, but what the students are interested in, right? In other words, I got to be kind of connecting that up, right? So this year we had a program and you happened with your students and we'd already decided the program. My question would be, is that if we had Afghan women and girls in the program next year, let's think about things that are particularly useful and interesting to them, right? Not to say this other stuff is not, right? And so that's,
well, I was teaching, you know, in my group chat, I mean, trying to talk about community peace building, you know, what does it mean? So I'm doing some translating.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why I was off screen, because I was communicating with them.
Yeah.
And they get it, but you know, you want a student that's at a higher level than most of the young women who were with
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's you know, but it's really
I don't want
important.
to exclude anybody. I'm just
I
saying.
don't want to ever exclude anybody.
But
No,
they
no.
wouldn't have a lot of input into the level of course analysis and things that
Right,
I
right.
found fascinating myself.
Right, right. Obi, you're there in Nigeria. Right? I'm gonna pick on you, Obi.
Yeah, David, thank you. Yeah, I was
It's
just trying
late in
to.
Nigeria, but I'm glad that you come every year. What would you suggest?
Yes, I was just trying to. Can you hear me, David? Everyone?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, so many thoughts run through my mind actually, and now one of the things like I can just say now I am in Nigeria, West Africa, but I'm just trying to think how we'll fit in. Is it in terms of partnership? I know, David, I've written some emails to you, you know, trying to see where we could step in. But I think, I mean, there are potentials, specifically in humanitarian education, and that'll be tailored to certain group of students here. And I think it's something we could actually speak more and strategize and see how we could take the first step forward and see how that works.
Tell me about the students that you work with. Give me some characteristics like age, gender, background. Give me a little bit more about that.
Yes, I work with different students. I work with student nurses.
Student nurses.
Okay. Yes, student nurses, actually, those between 40 year to final year. And I take them on humanitarian education and gender-based violence.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and
most
you know,
most of them are women, I would assume. No.
Pardon?
Mostly women.
Yes, yes, yes. But there's a mix of few men, you know, in nurses. Yeah, actually. And so, because some of them want to go into, you know, like go into emergency situations, you know, during after they are done with their school. Then I also combine the gender-based prevention education in my training, you know, with some universities that I train right now. And the other group is just secondary school students that I provide peace education modules and curriculum. But I think the university nurses actually makes sense, maybe, and also fit into the Forest Center plan for humanitarian education and maybe other stuff. I think, David, we've also done some, you know, had some discussion in area of GBV, how this can be bringing into the Forage Center, because also it's a global issue. Perhaps the colleges of education in the US have to also think about this. But I think for us in Nigeria, this is what I can think about now.
Well, you're dealing with a mostly female population as Thomas. So there's then us to think about what are some of the things that are affecting women, both at the interpersonal level and at the broader, macro level, we would say, right? So gender-based violence, opportunities for women, women peace builders, I'm thinking, lots of things there. So that gives us something to think about. Anybody else? Good, Tom.
One thought, I did something, it was fun, but to get it to attract students, if you had like an event, a debate or something like that, where they actually got to be the participants. If you had a theme for the sessions, give them an hour to debate some topic. I did this once. I had young kids, but
Well,
Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Pakistan, US.
well, in the
Basically
past,
kids, girls.
in the past, we've had students present. We didn't have anything this year. So I would want to go back to having students present. So maybe we have certain days or certain slots that we open to students to present. Like you, that one student who gave a 2-minute presentation on Afghanistan, right?
She was here. Ziba was here today.
Yeah.
Then she left, and she's looking for the video. I think she wants to show it to mom and dad.
Well, bless her. We
Yeah, I said I'll get it.
or recorded it, except that I can't get it to her for a
I
week or
said
so.
it'll just take.
Yeah, but yeah, that's something also. So letting the students present, right, gives them a chance. Okay.
Yeah, David, I was just thinking, is it possible that, before November of every year, maybe Forest Center could think about having webinars and maybe just meetings to discuss maybe on some relevant issues, that has to do with peace building, humanitarian education, perhaps within the college, community colleges, and maybe we could just think about this twice in a year, some serious critical issues.
You're kind of suggesting things that are kind of in our Forge Center conversation, but that's a tape thing. You're thinking about something that may be live and getting people together. I mean, one of the things that strikes me is that, and I've tried to do this, hasn't been successful, is that before we run the seminar, if we keep doing it where we are, is that a group of us convene early on and talk about what we might want to do. That's an idea too. So thank you, Opie. Thank you, Tom. Anybody else have thoughts? Ideas? Stephen, Sarah, Faisal, Lena, Sarah. Good, Sarah.
I'm wondering about, as much as I am loath to rename things, the branding of it. Is it the case that the title maybe makes certain people think that it's not for them? Like if I'm a student.
I'm willing to revisit that too. Yeah, it's the branding comes from 2013 because we were just US-based community colleges. And if what we're doing is inviting Afghan women and girls who are not in community college, OB students who are not in community college, then do we need to rebrand it? And I think that that's something we could revisit for sure.
Like Peacebuilding Summit or something like that,
Yeah, no. I think that's a great idea. I think it would be an easy thing to do. So, okay.
I would agree actually with what Sarah said. I was thinking the same thing, that I'm so glad that we had some presentations and some attendees who were not necessarily affiliated with community colleges, because we had a broad spectrum. But I also think that the title may therefore be misleading for either people who are very laser focused on that, or for those who might be discouraged from coming for that reason, thinking, oh, that's not really my area specifically. They might still get something out of what's scheduled.
Let's you and I brainstorm on that. It's an obvious change that, once again, there's obvious things sometimes I miss, that if what we have is not what we're getting, then we have to call it what we're getting, in a sense, right? And that could be an easy thing to do. So
yeah, I'm also thinking, David, perhaps is it possible that we could just get 1 or 2 organizations that could support scholarship for people who might be intending to participate, who may not be able to have the registration fee? I mean,
Well, yeah, well, and it's not a lot of registration, but it's a lot somewhere else. Like what, $80 to someone in the US to pay is not a lot, but in Nigeria, that's a lot of money. So
it's a lot of money.
no. And I think that that's something to think about. Or it's either scholarship or a reduced fee overseas. In other words, could I have a fee system where
Sliding
I
scale.
raise it on Americans, but I tell them raising it on Americans because we're lowering it on internationals. In other words, if next year it was $120 for American faculty to come, which is still a lot cheaper than anything else, but I'm reducing it to $20 to academics somewhere else. So then I don't have to worry about a scholarship. I'm just doing this. And I think we can do that. And I know other organizations that do that. They give a different fee to the developing world than to the first world. Right? That could do it. Right.
I
So
personally would also love to have like a demo of like one of your simulations. Kind of like what we were doing today, maybe just it doesn't have to be long, but just to get an embodied sense of what you do. But that's just me.
well, because what we do is face to face, it's in the field, it's a video, right? And we produce things before and they're kind of outdated. Well, let's look at doing something in July, Sarah. Talk to Sarah Dorr, and we could do something because, like I said, what we do is different, right? In that respect. So, but we can do that too. All right. It's about 4:30 my time. Unless folks want to talk a little bit more, I can let people go for the day. I know it's late where Sarah Bowman is and where Obi is and where Faisal is, but it's early the day before Stephen is. But thank you all. Thank you for hanging out for this last session. We will be in touch. We will be in touch definitely with the survey, but then I'll be in touch with you individually also. So I know all of you that were here at the end and start thinking about what this could look like. I think the branding idea and the fee idea, but also thinking about programmatic work that would bring in more students that may not be community college. So OB students, Tom students, that's an idea to look at also. We will have this posted. It won't be next week. It'll be the week after Thanksgiving on our YouTube channel that you can share widely. Thank you for being part of our community. And
yeah, and David and everyone, maybe in case you talk about programmatic issues, in case there are maybe some tasks that you feel that I can't help, I mean, just let me know. I could just jump into.
Okay.
I mean, all these discussions that we've had. Yeah. So
I give you a job. No, I understand. I understand. Thank you. Anybody else? Anything final? If not, we'll say adieu from Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Faisal, Sarah, Lena.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Stephen, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Stay in touch. And if you need connections to other people that weren't here, I can do that afterwards also. Thank you, Stephen.
All right. Thank you so much.